Hi and welcome, Jessamyn. I am so glad that you're here. I have
I'm
really
glad to
looked
be here.
forward to this conversation. So, yeah, thank you so much for saying yes to this.
Yes, thank you for inviting me, Lisa.
I have asked you to talk about letting the body lead today because that's one of the things that is really central to my work. And yeah, I wanted to hear your words around it because I think you have a really special way of communicating things and putting things into words. So yeah, I'm so
Mm,
excited to hear what you're thinking around letting the body lead.
awesome. Thank you. Do you want me to just kind of give you some thoughts on what it means to me, or do you have specific questions for me?
I think maybe if you would start by just sharing a little bit about your work and your point of view, like why do you do what you do, and how does that
Mm,
connect to letting the body lead?
okay. So I am a somatic healing facilitator. Um, I think that's a good umbrella term for what I do. I am a licensed massage therapist. I've also been trained in a modality called focalizing, which you know about, which is a somatic therapy modality. And um, I bring those lenses, the specific lens of healing and trauma resolution at the level of the body, into my coaching work as well. So I do individual transformational coaching, which um, I would say is just because I do it from a somatic lens, it's somatic healing as well. Because I believe that transformation is only sustainable at the level of integration, which has to do with body and connection with the body and connection with the information that lives in the body. So, really, my type of coaching is self intimacy work. And I call it that because I believe that if we are to really make any lasting changes in our lives, we have to know about who we are and who we're wanting to become at a very deep and intimate level. So that's a little bit about my work. Um, I would say that I came to this work just through my own way of navigating life, really. Um, I have learning the language of somatic therapy has really been an experience for me, like, of bridging what I do and how I move through the world with a model of therapy. Like, oh, there's a name for this, there's words for this, there's a language for what I do and how I exist in the world. I move through the world very slowly. I take a
Mm.
lot of time with integration. I take a lot of time with processing. I've always felt a little bit like out of the norm in that way. Like, I don't move quickly. I move at a slow pace and I feel things deeply. So I'm a deep feeler. And and my connection with my intuition, or the information that my body is offering me, has always been a very clear and clean connection. And I'm not always saying that I've regarded that information or that I've honored it, because I haven't. But the conversation has always been really clean, meaning I can hear my intuition um, very clearly. So I would say that just however it works, like being, however I learned to develop that relationship and be in tune with it, has led me into the different modalities of healing, like massage therapy and the healing arts realm. And from there, I've like gleaned all of these different tools, and eventually was led to, there's like this whole movement of somatic therapy. Like, there's a name for it. There's trainings for it. And when I took the focalizing training course, I was like, oh, this is my work. Like, this is what I do. This is how I show up. This is how I move through the world. So I'm really grateful for that. And I think that's a good, probably summation of how I got to where I am doing this work.
Oh, thank you for putting it so beautifully. And I love what you're saying about um, getting a language to what you already know and what you're already experiencing. You know that I had the same experience of like, oh, when we trained together, I had the same feeling of, oh, this is what I already know. I'm just now deepening it and understanding the tools of it.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love how that is connected to your body knowing, like the felt knowing. But it's interesting when you're saying that you've always had a clear connection to your intuition, because for me that's something I've really had to practice.
Mm.
So I wonder if you want to share a little bit about that and how that connects to your body. Is it like, have you just always, has it just been like a clear knowing? Is it something that feels a specific way, or how does that show up for you?
Mm. So I would say that I've probably become more aware of, in a felt sense, how my intuition presents itself. Meaning, I think I've always had this connection with my inner knowing, but it's been just something that's like undefined. I think of like my younger adulthood or childhood. I didn't have like a name for it, or a way of identifying like where it exists in my body. And I didn't have anyone prompting me like, where do you feel that, where, like that wasn't how I was taught to be in connection with myself in that way. I would say that I say that because I've always been an internal processor. So I have always like retreating within, or having that introspection has always been like my safest place. But as I've gotten older, especially with learning more about the body through my trainings in massage therapy and in somatic therapies, now I have a way of identifying where or why I feel the safety in my internal experience, like, and it is because of that connection with my intuition. I know my intuition to be true, I guess. And so it has changed. Like I say that I've always had the connection, and I believe that to be true, but my ability to really determine like what is my intuition versus what is not has strengthened and really developed and evolved through my understanding of the body. So now I would say that my experience of intuition, it is a lived experience. It is a felt experience. I think we talked a little bit about this the other day, where my intuition presents in a way that is, I'll try to explain this too. It's a little bit challenging for me, but it's like a deepened sensation. So a lot of times if I'm feeling confused about something, which this is the part where we chatted the other day, it's more of an elevated, like heady, there's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of like different voices, because I like to consider different points of views, but my knowing or my intuition is like more seated. There's like a depth to it, and it exists like usually right in my solar plexus region. And it's clear. So in all of my understanding, I'm someone who has really wanted to learn about myself throughout the years. Like, I believe that to be like the greatest thing that I could possibly study. And I know from like my human design, I don't know if you've heard of that, you know, that model of understanding oneself, but human design, I'm very gut led. So I can experience like a yes, that's a very visceral experience, like in my body, and a no. And I would say that there's a level of clarity, and it's not a mental clarity because the chatter can still exist. It's just a deep knowing that lives in my body that can be like, that didn't feel good, or that wasn't correct, or yes, that feels correct. And it's a feeling for me of, I would say, correctness. So I don't know if that answers your question. I think I kind of went in a little circle there, but it is something that I experience with the body. And so when when you presented this topic of like leading with the body, I love that. I love what that brings up for me is leading with intuition. Because I think that our bodies really are the sourcing for that that wise intelligence. And it can get a little tricky, right? Because our bodies are also biologically wired for survival. So on one hand, we have different systems. We have the system of our biology, which can sense danger, and all of this is wisdom, right? And then there's another operating system too, which is like our like intuitive knowing, which goes beyond even, for me, beyond even like the biological wiring.
I like, first of all, I really like that you took your time explaining it. And this is one of the things about somatics, right? It's not a one-to-one answer. It's not like, yeah, it's right here, or it always feels the same way. Of like, it's little nuances. It's learning to understand that the way you experience things in your body, the little nuances of like, this feels for me, for example, one of the nuances that I have learned to discern is between softness and hardness or rigidness within, which before I didn't feel any of that. I just, because I only felt the surface level sensations. And I think that's part of it also. It's hard to put into words because it is such a felt experience, right? And it's different. Your intuition feels different for you in your body that mine feels in my body.
Right. And your intuition it's such a complex, layered, nuanced experience. And the work of somatic therapy isn't like, here's what you should be experiencing. it's just about the cultivation of the listen and response, right?
Exactly.
It's the cultivation of the relationship. It's the cultivation of, what is the difference to you? How do you experience it differently when your body is responding from like a biological perspective, or from a trauma perspective, right? From a lived experience coding within you because of what you've been through, what you've experienced, which is unique to you, just like a fingerprint.
Exactly. What your body remembers, right?
What your body has gone through, what your body remembers, what your body is working through, what your body is trying to resolve. And your intuition as a living conscious being is going to show up differently in your life than mine is going to in mine. And it's going to speak different things to me, right? So it is such a unique and beautiful practice. I really just consider it a practice. I consider letting the body lead a practice of offering, I would say, like, you know how when something is given so much attention and power, which in our societies, the power of the mind, or the, our intelligence and the power of academics and the thinking mind, and like, it's given so much power. It's given so much power that when we say, like, letting the body lead, it's shifting our orientation of what's actually guiding us
Exactly.
into this information in here. And that is such a, it's a deeper listening. It's a slowing down. It's a process of slowing down. It's a process of spaciousness, right? Like, I think that it's just this, it's a reorientation to what we're allowing to have power.
I love that. I love that because learning to understand and navigate what is going on in your body, I think that is such a strong tool, as you're saying, to self-guidance, self-leadership, right? Rather than always looking outside of yourself. And I know that's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, right? Because when you get to that level of actually cultivating, practicing, and honing that navigation system and learning what is true for you, that is such a powerful tool. And I think for me, I love that you named survival, because one of the things that I often work with is discerning between fear and intuition, because fear overrides the whole system, right? So that distinction and learning, what does fear feel like for me and what does a no feel like for me, for example. So learning to know when it's an automatic autopilot fear response, and learning what your own guidance, your own intuition tells you, that I think that is such a powerful tool in learning to navigate the world from what is true to you, right? Rather than following whatever is in front of you.
Yeah. Or what has been sort of like conditioned in your own systems to help you survive on just a biological level. Like, when we talk about the intuition piece, I always think of intuition as the part of us that's untouched by our traumas. Like, it's the part of us that is like, I don't, maybe like the deepest self, it's hard to find. Again, this is such a languageless wisdom, I think, right? But I always think of, even in, I've learned more about parts therapy or parts work recently. And it's that like capital S self.
Yeah.
The thing that's constant, the thing that's that can't be destroyed.
Yeah. To me, there's a stillness to intuition, like things quiet down. And yeah, how to describe it, there's a real poetry to it, right? Because it's not something, as you're saying, that it's not something that we learn or practice in a world that is so focused on intelligence and intellect and mind, right? It's it feels new to us, but
Mhm.
one of the things that we often talk about is how this work is remembering, right? It's not learning something new. It's remembering what we have been taught to forget, because the
Yeah.
world and the culture we live in just it doesn't reward emotions, right? It asks us to disconnect from our emotions, to disconnect from our bodies. And to me, that's the biggest thing. It's remembering. It's
Mhm.
not learning a new, theory or something mind-blowing. Well, it is mind-blowing because how profound it
It
is,
is.
but it's not acquiring something new. It's rather stripping down, right?
Yes, I love that you said remembering what we've been taught to forget. And it's
Mm.
through, systems of oppression. It's through um like dominion over or control over and depletion of resources. It's like a reconnection with what is um innate. And it is ancient an ancient practice that would do us well to remember. And I think I love that this movement is happening, and that it is like a returning to, and there are societies that are so good at modeling what this kind of way of living, and it is just a way of living, it's a practice, it's a way of living, um is. And it's, again, it's like ancient culture that's like connection to the earth,
Mm.
connection to self, connection to intuition, um, connection to that sacred knowing, where all of these like, and this is getting into it, but all of these systems of like domination or colonialism or whatever, where it's like, in order for those systems to survive, they had to convince us to detach from our knowing, detach from our connection. And so this whole process it's not, it's simple, it's simple, but in this day and age, the societies that most of us are living in, um there's a lot of excuses not to do it.
Exactly. And it can be really hard, right? Because you need to find the spaces where you're invited to connect with the body and where you are not shamed for connecting with the body or for showing up with emotions, right? I
Mm-hmm.
can't tell you how often I am somewhere with tears in my eyes because I am very connected to my emotions, but
Yeah.
we're not allowed to, right? We're not rewarded for, you know, allowing ourselves to feel what we feel. I can't tell you how often I see either like watch an interview or in conversation with someone and people apologize for their emotions. They
Yeah. Mhm.
apologize
It
for,
happens all the time.
yeah, and it's just that wanting to disconnect and wanting to hold it back. To me, that is central to why I do the healing work that I do, because I think there is such an empowerment in learning to heal ourselves and learning
Yeah.
to connect with ourselves from compassion rather than judgment, right? And that
Mm.
control, as you mentioned, that power over mentality, that is so, the conditioning is so massive, right? So that it
Mhm.
takes a lot of practice and a lot of cultivating and a lot of returning to, a lot of remembering
A
to
lot
come
of
back to that
remembering.
natural connection, right? Because
Mhm.
it's a remembering of what is actually flowing naturally for us that we just have not allowed because of our conditioning and our culture.
Mhm. Yeah. Amen.
So before we end our conversation, can I ask you how you allow yourself to be led by your felt knowing, or allow your body to lead in like really practical situations, like making choices, like if you're offered, you know, some sort of new work, or if you're in a new relationship or in an old relationship, if something comes up, how do you respond? As you said in the beginning, I might not always act on that information, but how do
Mhm.
you navigate that? Because none of us are perfect, right? Sometimes we
Mm-mm.
completely ignore what we feel and what we hear and what we know. But
Mhm.
how do you navigate that? Um, Both like when do you act, when don't you act, and how do you relate to yourself if you, for example, act when you shouldn't have, or how is that process for you?
That's such a good question. So the first thing that's coming up for me is that I like to offer myself space. Meaning if I'm presented with a new opportunity or, new information about a relationship, or if I'm interacting with someone, say I'm like dating someone and I'm getting some new information, I like to offer myself space to sit with the information that I've received. And I can do that just simply through a request. Like, I need some time to sit with this, and really pay attention to what's coming up for me, with this information. Or, sometimes it doesn't have to be a spoken request. It can, or it can just be like as simple as, I'll get back to you. I need to give myself some time. So offering myself a pause. I really believe in pausing. It's something that I utilize with my children often, like where if I'm in a tricky situation with them where I'm feeling a lot, or I'm having a lot of emotions that would be really easy to be reactive with. If I can consciously remember to pause, I can tap into that deeper level of like the conversation that's happening between me and my body, of like, what is this really about? And I would say that that's a conversation between me and my capital S self. Or another way I like to think of it is my like inner parent, like my more evolved self, um my more centered self. So I would say pausing is huge in my practice. And that comes up a lot for me. I like to remind myself, you don't have to respond right away. You don't have to. Even if there's an expectation for you to respond right away, you don't have to. And
Oh,
I love reminding myself of like, you have time. You have time.
I love that.
Take your time.
Mm.
Take your time here. I remember the last person that I dated, I was like getting to know him, and there were some things coming up for me. Like my body was communicating a lot to me. My nervous system was communicating a lot to me about my dynamic in this interaction with this guy. And I was feeling nervous prior to going on a date. And it was probably date 3 or 4 maybe. And I remember my dear friend, I sent like an SOS kind of out to my friend, and she responded with the words, "You can take your time." And I was like, oh gosh, that's all I needed to hear, right? I didn't have to have the answer right then. I didn't have to know everything right away. Like, I got to take my time. I could move at my pace. And I think that feels like an important thing to say in regards to how I navigate and how I let my body lead, because it's like the conditioning of culture seems to be just like fast paced, like, you should know right away. And just sometimes you don't. And so offering myself space and time is a huge thing. Reminding myself that I can take my time.
Mm.
And also, on the contrary, being in relationship with my intuition in a way where um, if there's a no, doing like I also can I also can speak clearly from that space and be in integrity about it, right? Like,
I love
actually,
that.
that doesn't feel okay. And it can be
Yes.
as simple as that. Actually, that doesn't feel okay to me.
Mm.
And if there doesn't usually need to be any more information, but if you want to offer more information, you can be like, that doesn't feel okay to me. I'm not sure exactly why. And maybe
Mm.
I can let you know more later. But for right now, I just know this doesn't feel okay.
Oh, I
And
love
that's enough.
that. I love that, but that requires that you can hold uncertainty, right? And
Sure.
uncomfortable feelings. And for me, that's a big part of somatics, learning to hold that space. But all of
Mm-hmm.
what you mentioned, that is key somatic tools, right? The slowing down, the allowing yourself,
Mm-hmm.
the non-judgment. I really love that the slowing
Yeah.
down really impacts a relationship, right? How you can be like, I'm slowing down, you're slowing down. We don't have to find the answers. There are no right and wrongs here. We are feeling into what is going on. We're feeling into what feels right and
Mm-hmm.
wrong for us, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
learning, that allowing, rather than having a result of like, now this is happening, or now this is how it has to be. That allowing, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that slowing down and exploring.
I think so too. I think so too. There's no rush.
No,
There's no
there's
rush.
that's one
And
of the
I,
things I love most about somatics, the invitation to slow down in a world that is so fast paced, right? It's very profound.
it is. I, you asked a piece there too of like, how do I handle if, um, my intuition is speaking to me and I don't, honor it through action? Because that does happen to me as
Mm.
well. And I would use the example too of the same dating situation where there was an experience where my intuition was speaking to me, but I didn't really speak on behalf of it in the moment. And walking away from the situation, I felt out of integrity, right? If I felt the same kind of thing, like that didn't feel correct, that didn't feel right for me. And so the way that I handled that was to, one, I cried on my way home, like, and let myself feel that disconnect, like, let myself feel how it feels to not be honoring my knowing. It doesn't
Mm.
feel good. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel correct. It doesn't feel in alignment with my integrity. It doesn't feel like my authenticity. Um, and to sit with like maybe why, why? What was it about that situation where I didn't feel like I could speak up on behalf of my knowing? And then from that space, finding that center again within myself, and then bringing it to the person later and saying, hey, I wanted to talk to you about this situation. How did you feel about it? What was your experience there?
Mm.
And then offering my truth, which was, I didn't feel good about it. And I want to talk to you about that.
Mm.
Right. So that's even a way that I gave myself space, but it also ensured that because I felt what it felt like to not honor my knowing through action, it gives me that much more reason to not do that again.
Mm.
So
I
if
like
that
that.
situation were to happen again, I believe because of how I knew what it felt like to not be honoring it, that I'm not going to do that again, like that in those moments, it gives me that much more information of like, I would feel better if I just spoke up right now.
I love that. Like listening and tracking, listening to what you're learning and taking that with you. I really like that. And I also really like the idea of stepping back a little bit in relationship and centering yourself and then meeting the
Mhm.
other, rather than being reactive also, so that there's a real groundedness to that, right? To
Yeah,
meeting the other from your center and being like, this didn't work for me, or how did you feel? Because we don't always know what the other person's experience is, right? So
right.
to actually meet each other from that place, I think is there's something really profound and also healing about it, right? That can repair a lot if you can meet the other from that place.
Yeah, that's the hope. That's the hope. I think when we offer ourselves spaciousness and each other that kind of spaciousness, there's a lot that like reaction or reactivity causes this constriction to happen inside relationship, right? Like we're all just kind of buckling down on what we think is going to keep us safe. And that like pause and that centering and that stillness that you talked about, it does this like there's so much more space.
I love how you show that, because that constriction is from survival, right? That is like, I need to
Mm-hmm.
do this to get this to work. I need to fix this, right? Rather than breathing and being like, this is not okay. Let's look at that. Like being with that uncomfortable feeling of like, this is not perfect. How do I relate to that? How am I in relationship with that?
Yeah.
Rather than try and fix it straight away, right?
Yeah. With that urgency. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today, Jessamyn. I think we could talk for
Thank you.
hours. So I
I
really
know.
hope that you will come back later, because I really love to listen to your wisdom. You have a really specific way of putting things that I really appreciate. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate you so much and the work you do in this world. It matters.
It matters. That's such a good reminder. It matters.
Does.
Before I let you go, I thought we just share a little bit, because we're both super excited about our workshop coming up in a few weeks. So I thought we just share a little bit about that so people know what's going on.
Yes. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So our workshop is on Sunday, November 13th. And it's going to be a 2-hour workshop on navigating relationship from embodied intuition. So much of some of the stuff we talked about today. And it's from 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, right? What is that for CET?
I forgot that completely. I'll put it in the notes below.
Okay. I know, I forgot it too.
I think it's 7 o'clock, to be honest, but I'll put it, I think it's 7 o'clock Central European time, but I'll put it in the notes below.
Okay. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to co-facilitating together. I think that with our work and our lived experience, I think it's going to be a really valuable and helpful, like beneficial workshop for anybody who's navigating any kind of relationship. It's not just for romantic relationship or sexual relationship. Like this is knowledge and information and practice that is useful for across the relationship spectrum.
Exactly. I wish I had this workshop. This is what I love about teaching, is that I often teach what I wish my younger self had known. I wish I had known this in the beginning of my 30s and like in the 20s. I was lost in relationships, so I just really wish that I had known some of these things. So to be together in community and share these things, I'm really looking forward to that. And I really love what you bring about the self-intimacy. That's such an important part about being in relationship with others, is that we need to learn how to be in relationship with ourselves, right?
Yes. And it's the work of the lifetime, because we're constantly evolving and becoming. But when we can develop that connection and that deepened relationship with self, I think we have an easier time here.
Yes, that definitely brings a lot of ease and a lot of support and self-support. So that's a really profound it's, for me, it's really meaningful to have ways to feel more supported in relationships, right? Because it can be so challenging. So I really love that part of it, that it's something to lean on, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's going to be really good.
Me too. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, let's just land here and then come back again soon and share more wisdom, please.
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.